Thank you so much for joining us. It's yet another great Tuesday afternoon, and of course, we get to continue bringing to you this particular program, which is the Mixed Member Electoral System. Of course, this is a campaign that we are pushing. Of course, Mixed Member Electoral System. This is a campaign that is being pushed by CYLA, of course, in conjunction today with ZAFOD, as we try to see on how best we can get to engage different people or people that are differently abled as far as the electoral system is concerned. And of course, I am your host, Lance Sani Banda, taking you through this afternoon. I have with me representation coming through from ZAFOD, that is Dr. Thomas. Dr. Thomas, good afternoon and welcome to the program.
Yes, thank you so much, Lance, and good afternoon, all the viewers and listeners.
All right, thank you so much. And also, I have Mr. Justin Bakali. Mr. Bakali, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Lance. Good afternoon, listeners and viewers.
All right, then of course, not forgetting our mother body, the one in charge of running this sponsored program is CYLA, and of course being represented by Micah. Micah, good afternoon. How are you doing today?
Good afternoon, Lance. Good afternoon, viewers.
All right, to you, our dear viewer, from wherever that you are watching us, either on Facebook or YouTube as well as Twitter, this is a program that comes your way every Tuesday as we are pushing an agenda of seeing to it that there's a mixed member electoral system. It's brought to you courtesy of CYLA, and CYLA also in conjunction with different CSOs or NGOs that it partners with. And the first episode, we had another engagement. And this second episode, we are looking at, do persons with disabilities deserve to be elected? And of course, to help discuss this is a representation coming through from the Zambia Federation of Disability Organization, which is ZAFOD. Now, Dr. Mtonga, let me get to start with you. Quickly, let's tell the people who you are. Just a very short profile from you.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, I started out as a teacher at Chizongwe Technical High School, the first blind teacher there. Then I joined the University of Zambia as a lecturer in 2009. Of course, having done all the studies, because I joined the University of Zambia as a staff development fellow. Then after finishing my master's, I was appointed to full-time lecturing in 2011. Then, of course, in 2015, I also did another master's in international human rights law. And 2018, I started doing my doctorate in the education of learners with albinism. But in 2021, I decided to contest for Member of Parliament in my village, Chasefu constituency, where I lost to the independent by about 1,000 something votes. Yeah, so right now, of course, I was called back to the university, not on full-time basis, but as a part-time lecturer, while waiting that maybe they will call me back to full-time. I've applied, but I'm doing a lot of consultants work and training people in inclusive education.
All right. Thank you so much for that rich profile. Let me also quickly get to Mr. Bakali. Let's get to hear your rich profile as well.
Okay, Bakali Justin is my name. I'm also a teacher by profession. My first appointment was at Micah Teachers Training College where I lectured. And then after that, I left Makeni Islamic and joined government. And I went to Mazabuka School for continuing education, where I was lecturing as well as teaching. And then later on in 2001, I left Mazabuka School for continuing education, and I joined an international organization called Action on Disability and Development, where I was actually working with persons with disabilities. And that's where I met Mr. Mtonga while he was at Chizongwe Secondary School.
Yes.
And then after that, I think in 2012, the organization left Zambia. And then in 2013, I joined Zambia Open Community Schools, where I served in various positions. And then in 2020, I joined Zambia Federation of Disability Organizations, ZAFOD, where I'm the current federal director. Briefly.
All right. Thank you so much as well for that. And well, Micah needs no introduction. So Micah, we are jumping you only late. Let's quickly. So Micah, we engage you at least later on. Let's quickly get to engage Dr. Mtonga as well as Bakali in our topic of discussion, because what we are looking at is really something that needs great experience, or that needs to be talked about, by ZAFOD. This is an organization that is tasked to look into these matters or these issues. So CYLA, you will also be coming in, but for now, let me get to start with ZAFOD. But of course, according to our topic of discussion, we are looking at do people with disabilities deserve to be elected? Dr. Mtonga, you mentioned that you actually contested in 2021 general elections. Do you think that you deserved to be elected as member of parliament just because you have a disability?
Okay, of course, I did not need to be elected because of my disability, but persons with disabilities need to be elected. Not because of their disability, but because they are participants also in the politics. So maybe the issue of a disability comes in really secondary. And I think that I deserved to be elected because, one, I'm a Zambian citizen. Secondly, I think I should have also added a voice, to people with disabilities in the country. The last time we had someone maybe who is blind, maybe going into parliament, was in 1986 when the Nyimba lawmaker Koloweka was elected. But you remember that time it was during the one-party participatory democracy, which meant that whoever the president, threw his weight on, that's the person who would actually go to parliament. But since the competitive multi-party democracy began, we have not had that. And Lazarus Tembo was just nominated. Of course, there are a lot of people who may have some disability and they may be able to go to parliament. But, it's one thing to have a disability. It's another thing to be able to speak for other people with disabilities. So some people who have disabilities may not have a platform to speak for other persons with disabilities. So I think I really deserved to be elected because just like I've said, I'm a Zambian citizen. I'm a participant in politics, but I also needed to speak for fellow persons with disabilities. In my constituency, I also belong to that constituency of many other people, that he could have loved to be elected.
Pretty interesting day, and thank you so much for that. Mr. Bakali, let me come to you. Do you think it's important for electorates to, elect or vote for a member of parliament that is differently abled or that is with a disability, especially owing to the fact that maybe that disability can act as a barrier in their line of work?
Yeah, actually, really, I think disability should not really be a basis on which persons should actually should be able to participate in politics. Persons with disabilities, actually, they also deserve to be elected as members of parliament, just like what Mr. Mtonga has mentioned, that these persons with disabilities, one, they have a human right to participate in the electoral process. Two, they need actually to have self-representation. They know exactly what is good for them because they've experienced disability and they need to be part of the governance structure. Apart from that, Zambia is a signatory to a number of conventions which actually emphasize on the participation of marginalized people. And Zambia should be able to walk the talk. So issues of participation is a human rights issue, and it should not be something that persons with abilities should be looked upon to say when they participate, they are looked upon as if they are not part of the governance structure. So participation is a human rights issue. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for that. For this next question, I will start with you, Micah. I would like to, get your view before, or the view of CYLA before we get to ZAFOD, because I feel this is important that CYLA also puts in a word, looking at the fact that this is an organization which is championing the member electoral system. So as CYLA, in maybe your research or in your findings out that you found out, especially in this issue of mixed member electoral system, do we have a legal framework that supports the election of people with disabilities?
We do have our laws are not very precise when it comes to determining who should and who shouldn't be voted for. Our current constitution has principles of elections that promote equality as well as equity as a guiding parameter for electoral systems and for the electoral process. So the responsibility is on persons with disabilities to be able to avail themselves to be elected as leaders. As one example in sight is Dr. Mtonga that we have on the show. However, despite us having made a few strides around signing international treaties such as the UNCRPD, the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, then that we see reflected into an act of parliament pertaining to persons with disabilities, as well as the Mental Illness Act of 2019. These pieces of legislation culminate into various avenues that provide for the participation as well as election of persons with disabilities in various levels of our electoral system. However, there is still room and need for us to strengthen these pieces of legislation because they have been subjected to misinterpretation. The vagueness of some provisions in our law have allowed for some of the problems that we are seeing today that bar persons with disabilities from participating. I'm sure Mr. Mtonga will be able to attest to some of the challenges that he faced despite legislation being available and adequately providing for redress when an issue pertaining to discrimination of persons with disabilities arise, especially in the electoral cycle. I think the issue that is a problem at this point is the application or implementation of our legislation, because there are some progressive provisions in the Constitution as well as in the Electoral Process Act, but the powers that be have not implemented these pieces of legislation as per expectation of the Zambian people.
All right. Thank you so much. Let me quickly go to Dr. Mtonga. Dr. Mtonga, since we are saying that there is actually a legal framework that supports the election of people living with disabilities, or simply put, PWDs, and you having participated in 2021, what is an overview of this legal framework?
Okay, just to comment on what JB Bakari was saying, that there is need for self-representation. You know, there is this organ which was the International Day for Persons with Disabilities theme for, was it 2006? It says, nothing for us without us.
About us.
It's one thing, you know, for able-bodied individuals to sit and make decisions on behalf of persons with disabilities. But it's another thing for persons with disabilities to decide for themselves. So what is happening, of course, in the country as at now, is that people make decisions for persons with disabilities. Now, with regards to your question, yes, there is. If you remember the CRPD, the Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities, provides for the participation of persons with disabilities in both the voting process and even being elected to positions. And our CRPD, the CRPD is replicated in the Disability Act. The Disability Act also provides that persons with disabilities in Zambia should both be elected and also participate in the voting process. So while they can participate as voters, they can also participate as elections. I mean, as representatives. Although really being participating as representatives or participating as people who need to be voted for, I think that one has had a lot of challenges. As you may be aware that I think from the 1990s, extremely very few people with disabilities have attempted to stand and be voted for obvious reasons. One, when you want to stand in this country, you need to fight against myths and beliefs that persons with disabilities cannot do. You need to also to fight against myths and beliefs in this country that persons with disabilities are useless, you know, because these things come from our cultural background. And so the cultural background, you know, informs the voters that persons with disabilities cannot do. And that's the clear overview of our country, where you find that persons with disabilities are intimidated by the situation and the environment in which they are found. So for some of us who braved the wind that we needed to go and test the waters, it was really a very brave decision, which actually had to even part away with friends, where you make a decision to go and give it a try.
Okay.
Otherwise, apart from that, you know that the elections, if you have to stand as a person with a disability, you have to fight it alone because the resources may not be on your side. Apparently, if you are a person with a disability and you want to stand, you need double the resources that an able-bodied person needs. Because for me, let's say as myself who is blind, for wherever I need to go, I will need to go with somebody, a sighted guy. So it means I need to pay for myself. I need also to pay for my sighted guy. So that's why I'm saying a person with a disability needs double, the resources. And then the truth of the matter is that out there are discriminatory tendencies because the opponents will use, your disability as a platform to discredit you. But you have to be strong and push on. For instance, in my case, you know, opponents would go on the radio. How can you send you have children who are able-bodied and children who are disabled? How can you send a disabled child to go and work in the field? No, let them remain here. And these issues were reported even to the conflict management committee. But anyway, it's a starting point, so we hope that next time we'll do better. But there are many other issues that we can honestly consider.
Okay, quickly, let me go to Mr. Bakali. Now, Mr. Bakali, I know that, yes, there's the Disability Act, and obviously there's a legal framework that allows PWDs to participate in electoral system. Are you okay in the state that this legal framework is in, or through ZAFOD you would like to push for reforms?
I think what we've been advocating for, when you look at the collusion that ZAFOD is with CYLA and the National Women's Lobby Group, we have actually observed that the current laws have actually failed us in a number of issues, like what Mr. Mtonga has said. So currently, I think we have been pushing for reforms which actually will guarantee persons with disabilities to participate in the political arena. When you look at the challenges that Mr. Mtonga has mentioned, they are quite huge. The negative attitude, the attitudinal barriers that persons with disabilities face when they participate in the political arena, they are quite huge. You look at the environment. We have also environmental barriers. We have also institutional barriers, which focuses on the policies. We have these policies that have been there for quite some time, but these policies have not been implemented. Therefore, we need, this time what we need actually to go for reforms that will guarantee those which will be affirmative, so that when people with disabilities stand, they are guaranteed that they will be able to participate in the political arena. In other countries, people have managed it. They've constitutionalized some of these provisions, and persons with disabilities are actually participating. Last week, our program manager was actually in Tanzania, where he was in a meeting, a conference, where persons with disabilities who are MPs were brought in one place. And it was quite disturbing that Zambia actually had only one member of parliament with a disability. The countries were of persons with disabilities in parliament. The reason was because these countries, they've enshrined these affirmative action, positive discrimination in their constitutions. So I think that's the route that Zambia needs to go. We need to overhaul our policies and legal frameworks.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Bakali, for that. Again, quickly, let me start with you, Micah, on this one again. Or maybe before that, you, our dear viewer, you are watching a special program which is brought to you courtesy of CYLA, as well as ZAFOD. Now, CYLA stands for Center for Young Leaders in Africa, the Zambian chapter, and ZAFOD stands for Zambia Federation of Disability Organization. I have with me Dr. Thomas Mtonga, who is coming through from ZAFOD, as well as Mr. Bakali Justin, also coming through from ZAFOD, as not forgetting Micah representing Tyler. And of course, today we are discussing, do persons with disabilities deserve to be elected? This is a second sponsored program, of course, where we are championing the mixed member electoral system. Now, let's come to you, Micah. I would like you to give us an overview of participation of PWDs in the electoral system. We can go stage by stage. We start at the presidential level, parliamentary, as well as the local government, respectively.
Okay, I was seeking guidance from both Dr. Mtonga and Mr. Bakali. Hailing from the presidential level, I'm yet to see an aspirant with a disability aspire for that office. There were allegations in the past that late President Mwanawasa had suffered a mental impairment at some point, and so there's a school of thought that holds the view that we did have a president with some kind of a disability, which I beg to disagree. I feel that we have not inspired persons with disabilities to aspire for the highest office in the land, which is the office of president, largely because of the kind of electoral system that we use. We have seen a few strides being made around representation of persons with disabilities at parliamentary level. We have seen, I think in the last parliament, the most recent, the 2016-2021 parliament had at least 3 members of parliament with a disability. But then that number has again declined terribly to a meager 0.05% in this current parliament, meaning that even the 2 people that we had in the House in the last parliament did not qualify to, or were not elected by our electorate to give them back the mandate to represent them in parliament. I must also mention that just because these people are elected and they have some form of disability does not mean that when they go to the House, their mandate is to represent and speak on behalf of persons with disabilities. They owe their participation to the constituency they are drawn from, and therefore act in response to that very mandate. What we are saying is, let us change this narrative by guaranteeing and providing reservation of seats in our laws and in our constitution, as we seek to increase this participation. If we come down to the local government level, again, we have a huge number of councillors, we have a huge number of mayors and council chairpersons, but there is a very, very small number of persons with disabilities that are elected at ward level. And to make it worse, the wards are closer to our communities, and this makes it a bit easier as well as difficult for persons with disabilities to be elected, largely because of some of the challenges Dr. Mtonga has already mentioned that persons with disabilities have to grapple with. One of them including the myths around perceptions of the ability and competence of persons with disabilities, how for a long time our tradition has perceived them as an abomination in our society, which has contributed to the attitude we have around us choosing leaders with disabilities to represent us, but also the general expectation has been that persons with disabilities should just vote for other people than them holding significant positions in terms of elections. We have seen a huge number of persons with disabilities turning out to vote, but then sometimes even our voting structure and electoral system has not provided adequately for them to maximize that participation. For instance, Dr. Mtonga here will agree with me, the type of braille jackets that we are using do not contain the list and the names of people that we need to vote for. Instead, they contain numbers. And like one of the persons with disabilities I was interacting with today had mentioned, there is no political party that is known by number. So if I'm going to vote and I have a visual impairment, my ballot paper is reading number 1, number 2, number 3. How do I know which political party and which representative I'm choosing? So the participation for persons with disabilities in general has been a challenge, drawing that we do not have role models from the highest level of office, but also we have perpetuated their exclusion in terms of how we provide for persons with disabilities, even at election and voting day areas.
Mhm. Uh, Pretty well on that one, but quickly let me dash with time as we're also trying to rush. Dr. Mtonga, I know, is attending another meeting shortly, so before we lose him, at least let's get to capitalize on him with the little
Yeah.
time that we have.
Yeah.
But this time around, let me start with Mr. Bakali. What
Yes.
challenges do youths with disabilities face in the current political and electoral system in Zambia?
Okay, the challenges that youths with disabilities face actually are not different from the ordinary persons with disabilities. There are a number of challenges that youths with disabilities face. One is got to do with the attitude, the negative attitude that the general public has towards
Hmm.
persons with disabilities. This time, when you look at the political uh, scenario in Zambia, you have to be financially sound if you are to participate in politics. It's like politics now in Zambia are for those who have money. And you find that sometimes youths with disabilities and persons with disabilities might not have these resources. The other thing is lack of
So you can
implementation
switch on the microphone.
of the existing policies. We've been talking about the CRPD, which Zambia is a signatory. We have also domesticated this CRPD into the Disability Act. There is no implementation, despite that all these things are enshrined in our laws. Then the other thing is 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 the aspect of stigma and stereotyping persons with disabilities, like what Mr. Mtonga was saying, that persons with disabilities are looked as people that cannot manage, people that cannot lead. Instead, they should just be led by others. So there's all these things, and also the aspect of information. You'll find that when people go into these political campaigns, the information that they provide sometimes is not accessible to persons with disabilities who are either have challenges in terms of hearing or have challenges in terms of vision. So all these issues pose serious challenges for youths with disabilities to participate in the political arena. And also, when you look at the manifestos of the political parties themselves, the so-called political parties, they are not also inclusive. Their manifestos, their policies are not inclusive. We need really to see how political parties can also be inclusive. Like what Mr. Mtonga has said, if you are going to adopt a person with a disability, what kind of support do you need to give this person? They need to exercise what is called reasonable accommodation, because a person with a disability will require extra resources for him or her to move around. So the issue of reasonable accommodation to ensure that this person with a disability is able to participate on an equal basis with others is very, very important.
Thank you so much for that, Bakari. Dr. Mtonga, obviously, through your experience, at least you went down on the political ground and, campaigned and
Yes.
everything.
Yes.
Through that, kindly share with us a few challenges that you faced, during campaign.
Okay. Of course, I partly mentioned some of them, just like JB also mentioned. Of course, the first one was that maybe I started a bit late because I started in 2019 after 2018, after a lot of people from the constituency really told me that they were really yearning to have me as a member of parliament. Of course, that dream started a long time ago. At the time we were meeting with JB in Chipata, nishibaganizo ya ambapo kale kubali. Yeah, so but if Mazima when the chief encouraged me in 2005, they wanted me to stand in Chipata Central, but I think I was afraid. I was thinking that at that time I needed to pursue some studies and then maybe let come back. Now, the first real challenge is the challenge of resources, finances. Because just like I said, for a person with a disability to run the show, apparently in Zambia today, it seems to be part of, it's highly financial influenced. Most of the elections are financial influence, because especially when you are talking about rural areas, because in town maybe people would be quite civilized and they think, okay, this man is telling, but in the rural areas, they really want to see you throw around the resources as a way of winning them. So the one who won, of course, started a year earlier than myself, and then that's when I went on the ground. But now, dealing with people who are already persons with disability cannot do. So you have to change their perception. You have to change their perception for them to start believing you that you can manage to do it. So I had to repeat my achievements time and again. Most of them, when they listen to my achievements, that's when they would say, this man is able to. Look at what he has done. So I'm now thinking about what about the ordinary person with a disability who might not have gone the way done it, because I think out of all my fellow contestants, I was the most educated, I think, and I was also the most traveled. So that's actually won a good number of people to say, okay, maybe we give him a try. But the issue also of, where you are dealing with that are ready to bring you down, based on your disability. So that the Electoral Commission of Zambia need to really see how they can handle that. But that, the issue of just general people themselves thinking so long that a person with disability, how is he going to represent us in the parliament? How does a blind person, how does he write? You know those things. So that a blind person, a person who is deaf can manage to speak to people and all those things. So those were some of the real challenges, to change the perception of the people, and also to also change the perception of your fellow opponents, that they should think the correct way about you. So despite having laws that the the political ideologies of persons with disabilities, but you find that on the ground things are on quite different.
All right. So after identifying all these lapses or problems that we have
Yeah,
in the current electoral system as
yeah,
regards to persons living with disability, or
yeah.
in the quest for a mixed member electoral system, let's get to start with I will still continue. Let's get to start with ZAFOD. Like, really, what recommendations would you suggest, to be included in the system? We are to you are obviously mixed member electoral system. Dr. Mtonga, I will start with you and then probably end with Micah.
Okay. Manikuiraba. Okay. You know, the value that I think I, I might speak about is that we need to have part that is a representative of the people. Let all the people there, so that for themselves what they feel. Whatever it to have that situation, that would be the best, because I can foresee that, well, I know that other people with disabilities have been propelled to stand in the next maybe election. But we need a system that should be able to support, the contesting of persons with disabilities. So in this case, remember the Bill 10, which was talking about the mixed member. I don't know whether it was member electoral system or proportional representation, but it was talking about how to bring disabilities into parliament, where they are voted for by other persons. I think that though the Bill 10 was lost out, I was telling my colleagues that it was like a dish of water when you are bathing a baby together with with the dish itself. You throw the baby together with the dish where you are bathing. Now, there were some of the things that were very good, and I think one of those that was very good, to have representation of persons. So whatever it would take to have persons represented, but that would be the me, because our look at Uganda, they've been doing it for the past 20 years now. In our South Africa, that we talk about, they have the quota system, the proportional of even if so the honest thing if Zambia have listened to everyone. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mtonga. Quickly, Micah, let's get CYLA's recommendations on this issue.
Okay. There are quite a number of recommendations that we have pertaining to electoral reforms. One of them includes just a mere implementation of the law as it ought to be implemented. If we are saying we want different stakeholders in the electoral process to participate adequately, let us do what is required. Let us disaggregate information that is being collected during voter registration so that adequate resource allocation can be made. If we are going to, for example, budget for the provision of portable ramps rather, and lamps when it comes to the visually impaired for them to be able to vote appropriately, let us do what is required. Until we are able to disaggregate information, it is difficult for the Electoral Commission of Zambia to allocate resources as they are required. We learn from our lessons from the 2021 general elections, where we saw a number of braille jackets going to waste and not even being used appropriately because information as to which polling stations had persons with visual impairment was not captured adequately. We are recommending an overhaul, or rather an addition, of proportional representation that is parallel to the current first past the post. And we are equally saying, let political parties begin to develop systems and mechanisms that accommodate persons with disabilities. If this narrative is supposed to change, as well as recommending that persons with disabilities themselves begin preparing themselves to take up leadership position, because freedom is not handed to you, you demand for it. And if we are to win this fight of inclusion of marginalized groups, be it women, be it youth, be it persons with disabilities, we ought to have a multidimensional approach to the problem. Let the duty bearers take up their responsibility um, of um, of them carrying out their responsibilities the way they have to. We are also saying let adequate resources be allocated to ensuring that access to information is in such a way that all forms of disability are able to access this information. Are we saying that we are not able to translate, for example, our legislation as well as sensitization materials to video and audio versions where different types of disabilities are able to access? Are we also saying that we are not able to engage our communities and even the disability movement themselves when we begin designing and developing our electoral laws and regulation, as well as the entire system as a whole? So we are recommending that this is a multidimensional issue that needs multidimensional response from both from the stakeholders as the electorate, as well as those who are charged with the responsibility to manage elections.
All
Now,
right.
Lance, before you can come in, I was to take off by 16:30, but I think let me hold on a bit to offer them an explanation. So I will wait until I listen to the comments.
Okay, this is really great, and thank you so much, Dr. Mtonga. I think since you are still here, perhaps I can revisit the other question or questions that I left out in trying to rush that we do not delay you in the other meeting. So. The other question, obviously, this one still comes through from the challenges that people with disabilities face. in the current, especially electoral system in Zambia. Here we are talking about the issue of polling stations and people with disabilities accessing information, either press releases from the Electoral Commission of Zambia, and then also when these ballot papers coming through, because we know that if you are participating in an election, when ballot papers from the constituency that you are standing in, you are either supposed to be present or send through presentation that can witness the coming in of those ballot papers. How is that situation? Now, I would like to get it from you that participated. Did you have all this information at your fingertip, or you had to make some calls and follow-ups to the authorities that man this election?
Thank you so much, Lance. Apparently, of course, because I stood on the ruling party, you would have a lot of supporters in that case from the ruling, and they would be able to give you a lot of information. Now, I'm really just thinking that if I had stood on maybe an opposition political party, most of that maybe I was going to learn about it later, because the constituency where I stood is rural, meaning that most of the information, people rely on the radios and the social media. There are places where network
Which is very bad.
not actually find network there. So in my case, maybe I survived because of that. I remember when the ballot boxes came, they were trying to call me. The returning officer was trying to call me to go and be present when they were receiving the ballot boxes. And I was in a place where there was no network. So they had to engage the chairperson, the district chairperson, to go and stand in for me. So obviously those, yes, but the real thing is that from voting up to standing, contesting as a person with a disability, the challenges are still real. Okay, for instance, if a person with a physical disability is voting, there were a lot of people in my constituency where there were no ramps. Even where I voted myself, the place where I voted from, Campelo, it had a very high step. To an extent that so how a lot of things will be seen, And I was asking the presiding officer, but usually, how do we have such a high step? You mean you couldn't have done something just to allow those old women, and old men who cannot climb this step, just to help, come up here? Because some of them would be discouraged because of that. Now, that is challenge, towards people with disabilities. Look at the issue of the product, which Zambia has been challenged. Of course, we thank them, but even myself as a contestant for that matter, I couldn't use, I had to tell my wife. My wife decided for another boyfriend. She could have even used it, but of course, anyway, I know that my wife, but the so the issue is that the rail jacket has not been helped the 2 times, even myself as a politician, I could not use it because it only has numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. And last year we had 16 candidates, so it has numbers. It doesn't tell you 1 is HH, number 2 is Calabar, number nothing. People have to tell you, and you must memorize all the numbers. Now, which one can you vote like that? You depend on the member. For 16 candidates, you memorize all of them. It doesn't work like that. So we have been saying we need electoral reform in terms of even the issues of the yellow jacket. If myself as a candidate, I could not, because I have voted, but I could not use it. So from voting up to contesting, there are still a lot of challenges that the Electoral Commission really needs to work on. Yeah.
All right. Well, unfortunately, we still have to run. Time isn't our best ally, Dr. Mtonga. I think for continuation of this, we'll have to plead with CYLA that they bring you back and we continue, because there are messages that have come in, especially from Jabu, who is saying that there's a lot of stigma against people with disability. What interventions should be implemented to curb this? And truly, I would have loved for you to respond to that, or maybe to include it in the recommendations which I had asked for, to say what recommendations would you suggest to the electorate?
Yeah. So, Lance, this stigma is real. I just think where maybe some know how to prepare, and you find people come and they're saying, oh, Bekaya, that's it, Tumbuka, meaning you can't see. I was really proud to pull up to an extent that I remember some campaigns I went for. I would go out and people would climb the trees. Not this person who is blind and is stuck. But at the same time, I would hear people talking. But now, how is he going to do this? We have people who are disabled in our village. Do you see them doing it? This man is telling us a lie. I know with these glasses, people will not believe that he's really disabled. They've brought a liar to come and cheat. So the big is real, but I think first of all, ourselves as persons with disabilities, we must first of all show up ourselves. Lance, I just want to mention that if ourselves can take up, other people follow. I bought my first 20, and I said, there's no way I can buy a car and never drive it. So I told him, sit on the passenger, and you'll be telling me right. And you say I was an automatic vehicle. So I started driving. No. Turn to the right. I did that. Now, that thing helped me. I went to teach my wife on how to drive. This time, my wife giving us a license. But what it really that helped me go that far? It's the experience. So the issue is that ourselves as persons with disabilities, we must take up the mantle to push ourselves into the circle. Now, apart from that, the recommendation is that political parties must open up, to persons with disabilities, allow them to, sit there, let them also be participants in the political, you know, uh, in the political, because you find that sometimes people with disabilities may want to participate in the political scenarios, but the political party may push them out because they may not. And so we need from political parties and the government. Government to go beyond. Government should be able to bring on board disabilities and put them in positions so that people should be able to see that here is a person who has been put as a role model. If, for instance, UPND appointed to ministerial, you can imagine what that contributes to the mindset of people. Because people will say, even it knows that people who are blind can do it. It knows that a baby who is disabled can manage to do it. And so that will bring a very powerful sensitization campaign. I think those are some recommendations that I can honestly say, that to persons with disabilities, let's take up the mantle. Political parties include the persons with disabilities, and the government go beyond political party to consider persons with.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mtonga. And of course, this is where we have to end the program. Of course, this afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, you've been watching a special broadcast, which is sponsored by CYLA, of course, in conjunction today with ZAFOD. But of course, my guest was Dr. Thomas Mtonga, as well as Micah from CYLA. Dr. Thomas Mtonga is from ZAFOD. And also we had Augustine Bakali also from ZAFOD right there. Thank you so much. Justin. Yeah, not Augustine. Okay. Well, they rhyme. Thank you for the correction. Yeah, so these are the people that which we had. Remember that next week Tuesday again we bring you another episode of this program, which we are calling Mixed Member Electoral System Campaign. So we are trying to campaign that there is an introduction of a mixed member electoral system, so that we can accommodate each and every Zambian into the electoral system. Lady and gent, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate, and thank you to you who continue knocking on your doors, as well as to our viewers on Facebook and YouTube. We say thank you, and we really enjoyed your questions as well as your viewership. Join us again next week, Tuesday, as we bring to you this great program. Good afternoon.
Bye.
Good afternoon. Thank you.